Hello, everybody, and welcome to E-Train Talks. I'm your host, E-Train. I'm a 14-year-old literacy advocate, podcast host, and the founder of E-Train Talks, Inc., a 501c3 nonprofit, a charitable nonprofit. And every year I look forward to this special podcast because now we are in National Library Week, a time to celebrate everything libraries and the librarians who help transform lives and strengthen our communities. And it's the perfect time now to talk with library heroes, including school librarians. And today, I am so proud to introduce you all to the wonderful librarian and a personal book hero of mine, who I've had the chance to meet in person, now virtually, Todd Burleson. Thank you so much for being here with me today, Todd.
Well, thank you for this really wonderful opportunity. I have been watching your podcasts and your interviews and listening and sharing your book reviews with students for over 2 years now. And it's an honor to be on your podcast.
Well, it's an honor to have you. And I mean, it really, really is. And I'm so grateful that you've been sharing my book reviews with your students. I'm so grateful that you're helping them receive new book recommendations. And now they'll be able to see it's Mr. Burleson. He's on E-Train Talks. So, for those who don't know already, Todd is an incredible school librarian. And I know this because I had the chance to see him in action with his students. And I saw just how much he inspires and celebrates books with every one of his students. And not surprising, Todd is an award-winning school librarian and a book blogger, and he's also now an author with a brand new debut middle grade book coming out soon. Todd has also been a huge supporter of my literacy journey, and I knew Todd would be the perfect librarian to talk to during National Library Week. So, Todd, if you're ready, let's dive into the questions.
Let's do it.
All right, so one thing that instantly stood out to me when I had the honor of visiting your school last year was the passion your students had for reading. I also love that they asked so many questions, they were interested in new book recommendations. What do you do in your school library to foster love of reading?
Well, um, I'm glad you saw that because it is truly magical. And I guess the biggest thing that I try to do as a school librarian is just truly to create a welcoming space where all are welcome and we focus on curiosity. We try to give as wide a range of books as possible in diverse voice, diverse representation, diverse formats, and to know the readers, not just the books. I mean, I think it's so important to know the books. You have to do that. That's obviously part of the job, but to know the readers is even more important.
Absolutely.
Um, our students have a voice in what we add to our library. There is a suggestion form on the very front page of our school website or our resource center website, our library website, and students submit their own recommendations there, but also, at the circulation desk, they're constantly recommending books to us. And I am blown away by how much they are on top of what's new and what's coming out and what their favorite authors or creators are making. And so I honor that by giving them the opportunity to help us choose what gets put in the library.
That's
Um,
amazing. Oh, sorry.
yeah, no, I just was going to, the other thing I was going to say is just reading is reading, celebrating all forms of reading, graphic novels, traditional fiction novels, novels in verse, as I mentioned, audiobooks,
Mhm.
everything, any, podcasts, to me, that is reading. Reading subtitles, to me, that's reading, and reading is reading. And so I find that when you start categorizing certain things as reading, you are starting to narrow the funnel of what kids then begin to see themselves as readers. So that's, I think that's how I work to do that.
That is a fantastic answer. And I think it's so, so important for kids to actually have a say in the books that are included in their school libraries because the only real way to get kids to love reading is for the kids to love what they're reading. And when you're
Right.
able to receive the recommendations and actually kind of take them into account and actually get the books that the kids are asking for, that shows that A, you care about them, and B, you respect them. And respect is what a lot of kids are looking for in terms of books and in terms of just being human beings.
Absolutely.
So, my next question for you is about an award that you actually received that I was so delighted to see because you deserve it so much. You received the prestigious honor of being named the School Library Journal's 2016 School Librarian of the Year. So can you share the emotions you felt when you learned of this honor that you received?
Yes, it's almost been a decade, since I won that award, and I feel like my whole life changed at that moment. The emotions I had, I think knowing that I was nominated, first of all, was huge to know that the staff and administration and parents and students believed in what was doing, what I had done, and potentially what I would do. That that belief meant the world to me. I felt seen, and I was honored, to have that opportunity to represent other school librarians in our country, and I think that it opened a whole lot of doors for me as both a teacher, as a librarian, as a passionate advocate, and I hope that over the last almost decade, I've done everything I can to show that I deserved that honor.
Well, I certainly think you did, and I certainly think you still do. And one interesting aspect of your school library and one interesting aspect to see on social media is the inclusion of AI. And I think a lot of teachers, a lot of school librarians, they're kind of, I guess, skeptical about AI. They're not really sure how to use it and if to use it. So, can you explain some positive ways that you use AI in your school setting and the best ways to introduce kids to AI chatbots or other forms of it?
Yeah, I've been honored to have the opportunity to present on this topic multiple times this year or in the past calendar year. And um, I I think it is a little tricky. I mean, I think that, technically AI platforms are not in the user agreements, it is a 13 and up um, platform, almost all of the, ChatGPT or any of those. And so I do not advocate in any way using those platforms with students who are younger. What I do advocate is, as an educator, learning how these platforms can help you do your job more efficiently, more effectively, and to take out some of the drudgery work or, um, the work that just bogs us down as educators. And you can use AI to help you with that. Now, as far as students, there are lots of platforms, Magic School AI, that are geared toward helping teachers use AI with guardrails for their students. And in my particular district, we are working to develop our policies and our platforms, and we are going to be choosing one of those sorts of platforms for next year for our students to use. And I'm excited by that because what that does is it allows students to interact with a chatbot, for example, but it's a chatbot that has, as I mentioned, guardrails. It isn't free and wide open, and you don't really necessarily have to worry about students asking out a question that would be inappropriate or asking, that it would do something inappropriate. Of course, it's technology, so there's always a little bit of, you know, uh, there's always a little wiggle room there, I guess. But um, the advantages can far outweigh the disadvantages. With my students, and I teach 10 to 12-year-olds, I use AI in a program we use every day called Canva. Canva has several built-in artificial intelligence enhanced tools. And one of those that I find particularly useful is the image generation or the magic media is what Canva calls it. And it's essentially like a Dali or a art blender. It creates images, but what I like to do with that is I like to use Google's say what you see platform, which is a Google experiment. And basically, what it is it gives you a an AI generated image, and you then have to describe what that image is, and then it
Mm,
generates another image and tells you what percentage your image is, what the match is. And what that has done for my students is has taught them how to use tools like Canva's image generation in a much more effective way. And so they're not just, they're not frustrated so much with what the image generation is creating, because they're literally learning, oh, well, if I want a shoe, if I tell it I want a blue shoe, then they can add those details in to make it even more specific. So I guess I have to temper my answer with, um, it is important for 13 and under that we are careful with those tools, and certainly careful with them as we get older, but we need to find ways that have those built-in guardrails. Now, with students who are older, I think it's critically important that we teach that digital literacy, that the digital ethics. It's so easy to just simply put in a prompt into ChatGPT and take that and feel like, well, this is my writing. Well, we know that that isn't accurate. It's not true, and we need to teach students the difference between using a tool to help you edit, revise, and to create.
mhm. That's
I
a
could go on I could go on for hours on that, so I'll cut myself off.
That is a great answer, and, I mean, I find myself learning a lot just from hearing you talk and hearing you talk about AI
Mhm,
and the pros, the cons of it, because it is
mhm.
really confusing, and AI is constantly developing, so it can be
Yes.
really tricky to know, what platforms of it and, how exactly, like, kids can learn from it in the best ways possible. But you seem to
Yeah.
have that kind of, um, like, locked in, like, you know exactly what to do, and I think your students are really benefiting from the work that you're doing.
I think I'm just innately curious, and I think that that is really important for all educators to, if you're afraid of something like AI, and I encounter quite a few people who are afraid of it, um, the best thing you can do is start with one simple tool and start exploring it. You know, for some people, I've shown them ChatGPT and had it come up with, give me four ingredients. Okay, now let's come up with a recipe with these four ingredients and see what we can do with that. And once you show them something like that, they're like, oh, whoa, okay, I see some potential here.
Yeah.
Or you give them five, you put in five books that you love and ask for some suggestions, and all of a sudden they're like, whoa, okay, this has got some, this could go somewhere. So start small and be curious.
Absolutely. So, I was thrilled to learn that you've actually written a middle grade historical fiction book with a fantastic title in itself, Beyond the Horizon, Where Friendship Takes Flight. So I'm super excited to get the chance to read your debut novel sometime. And to everybody watching, without giving away any spoilers, will you share what your new book is about?
Yes, absolutely. So this is a 13-year work in progress,
Wow.
and so almost as old as you are, E-Trade. And it is a story, at its core, is a story of two boys, and it happens to take place in 1944. So the World War II is happening in a city called Dayton, Ohio. And I grew up in Dayton, Ohio for a few years of my young life. And at in Dayton, Ohio is an Air Force base called Wright-Patterson. And in 1944, it was called Wright. There was a field there called Wright Field, named after the Wright brothers.
Mm,
And I learned completely by accident that some of the Japanese Americans who were, um, put in internment camps from the West Coast, some of them were relocated to Dayton, Ohio in 1943. And my story is about a young boy named Kenji, who is a Japanese American boy, and Jamie Thompson, who is, for all intents and purposes, a white American boy. And the two of them meet and become friends. And through that friendship, both of them begin to break down the barriers and the prejudices that they have learned through their surroundings, through their families. Um, they begin to see one another in a different light, and they begin to see the world in a different light. And along the way, they encounter one of my heroes, Orville Wright.
Wow. That sounds like a fantastic book, and I'm actually currently learning about the Japanese internment camps in World War II in English class currently. So I feel like it's kind of a perfect time to talk about
Yeah,
this because I feel like a lot of curriculums are diving into that right now.
yeah,
And I think it's super important that we talk about the fact that the internment camps did exist, but also that not, I mean, the experiences were terrible, but there's always a little bit of hope on the other side.
right,
You just have to find
right,
the right person, the right friend.
right, right. Yes, that's in a nutshell. That's what this story is about.
So maybe
And
one
I
day we'll have Todd Burleson's books in curriculums in schools. You'll never know.
That'd be great. That'd be great. Yeah, no, I mean the whole thing with this book for me is I wanted to find a way to do two things. And the first was there are already so many books written about the Wright brothers, both for young kids and adults, um, and I wanted to find a way to tell a story that um, would be interesting for both groups of people. And it turns out that Orville Wright, the first man to fly in 1903, he took his final flight on April 26th, 1944. And he didn't know it, obviously, at that time that this was going to happen. But in my book, I tell that story and connect the history of Orville Wright um, in a way that has not been told yet in any of those other books. And I also wanted to tell the story of the people who were interned in the internment camps, but in a way that honored them and also that challenged us, those who, if it were 1944, I would have probably been one of the people who would have been. I'd like to think not, but who would have felt that that was justified that they were put in these internment camps. And so it's been an act of like real reckoning for me too. Like, well, what would I have done? I mean, I have no
Yeah.
idea, but that's what the power of historical fiction does for me is it puts you in a situation, in a time, in a place, and makes you question what you would have done, and hopefully you learn from that questioning.
Yeah. And I think saying that you might try to take a stand is one thing, but just kind of picturing yourself in that specific time period, would you? I mean, what if your entire community would have gone against you and would have disagreed with you? But I
Right.
think it's also important to note that there's never a wrong time to do the right thing. There's always a right time to do it. And
Yeah.
um, hopefully your book inspires some kids to take on that idea that that you should do the right thing, even if it
I,
means you might be I guess, considered a social outcast, or you might be considered
yeah.
doing the wrong thing. In your heart and in your mind, you're doing the right thing because when all's said and done, specifically the Japanese Americans, most of them, if not all of them, they didn't do anything wrong. They were wrongfully imprisoned. And if somebody just took a little bit to think, wow, we're really imprisoning our friends, our family friends, people we've known, people who have been our neighbors for years. Is this right? Or did they do anything wrong? Just take a moment
Yep.
to think about it, and you'll
Yeah.
realize that they didn't. So taking a
Right.
stand is super important.
Agree.
So my next question for you is actually about the process that you took to publish your book. So you took a very unique approach and not just self-publishing your book, but in itself self-publishing, because
Hmm.
you use a platform called Kickstarter, which is not a
Hmm.
traditional path, but it seems pretty effective. So can you share how your publishing journey is going so far and what prompted you to try to publish your book in the first place and get your stories out there in the world?
Sure. I would say that the book is written, but I decided that I wanted to go the independent publishing route for a few reasons. One, I wanted to retain full control.
Mhm.
I wanted to be in charge of the cover. I wanted to be in charge of the layout. I wanted to be in charge of what the finished version was. And in my learning, I've learned that a lot of, especially beginning authors, lose a lot of that control by going with a traditional publisher. Secondly, I am under no illusion that I would have a chance to be traditionally published without a tremendous, tremendous amount of work. That's why it's taken me 13 years, because I have spent a good 7, 8 years of that attempting to have this story traditionally published. It looked different then. It was more in the form of an older age picture book. But now I've decided that, to me, this isn't about making money. This isn't about becoming famous. This is about telling and sharing a story that really matters. And I have found that um, in traditional publishing, the big five, if you will, um, it's it is a so there is a committee of people who are deciding whether the story is told or not. And I'm not willing to wait for that. I'm not willing to sit around and spend years continuing to push this story to those gatekeepers. I want this story to be told. And frankly, it's because I have 13 more that are in various stages of creation. And I want to tell stories. That's what I'm all about. It's not about making tons of money. It's not at all. Um, so that, I'm not sure if I completely answered it, but the Kickstarter is actually to help fund professional editing,
Mm.
some design work, and to parlay a little bit of the printing costs that go into, some first runs of books and things like that. I'm super honored that I have secured the services of one of the editors of the Hunger Games series to be my editor.
Oh, cool.
And through a platform called Readsy, I submitted my work to her, and she said that she really was interested in working together. And of course, that's expensive, and it should be, because she deserves to be funded well for her services. So that's what the Kickstarter is for, is to take this to the next level. So it's not just simply me self-publishing, or, vanity publishing is another way some people call it. I really want to make this book the very best that I physically can, and put it into the hands of readers who I'm hoping it resonates with.
Well, I hope that your Kickstarter kicks off and you're able to acquire some professional editing, and hopefully your story can take lift off. I'm making all these puns now. I don't know where I'm going to stop, but I
Yeah.
sincerely hope that your book, Beyond the Horizon, will get the love and get the support it deserves. And while I haven't personally read your book yet, I just have a feeling that even just from hearing the message that it shares, that it's a story that needs to be
Mhm.
told, and needs to be read. And I'm super excited for you that you're able to write a story. You have more in the works, and even if, whether you become famous or not, it's all about just spreading book love, spreading book joy. And no matter what happens,
Yes.
we're all here rooting you on. We support you,
Thank you so much.
of course. And, every school librarian has a backstory. They may not be like Batman or like Superman. You may not be taken off of a planet called Krypton. However, you have a very interesting backstory that I remember actually learning about when I had the chance to meet you. You shared a very interesting tale about how your journey to becoming a school librarian in your specific district actually started. So, can you share what inspired you to take on this profession and how you ended up in your particular school and school district?
Yes, but I'm gonna abbreviate it because it's a pretty long tale, because I've been doing this for over 3 decades. But
Right.
to begin, I'll just say that I had the great fortune of teaching or going to college at Ohio University in Athens, Ohio, and I had a professor who was writing a book about progressive schools, and he asked once in a lecture, "Would anyone want to come on a field trip?" And I was like, "Sure, I'd love to." And long story short, I ended up visiting with him, and visiting at Hubbard Wood School, which is where I taught for a couple of decades. And Winnetka, the community where Hubbard Woods is a tremendous, amazing place. It has an over 100-year history of progressive education, and I was enamored. And I did some teaching in North Carolina and did a couple of years at one of the other elementary schools, did a couple of years at Baker Demonstration School while I was getting my master's, but I ended up back at Hubbard Woods and taught there for a couple of decades. And our beloved librarian, Bob Golden, was retiring. And I knew that a couple of years before. And so I went back to get my study library science. And when Bob retired, I interviewed for and was hired for the position of the librarian in that school, and I absolutely loved it. And day one, I began, summer, day one, I began completely remodeling the library with a good friend of mine, and we spent almost every single day at the library that summer. And over the course of the next 5 years, we essentially redeveloped this library space into something we called a libratory, like
Ooh,
a play on library and laboratory. And we created an incredible makerspace and had hundreds of librarians and teachers from schools all over the country who came to this space and to learn with us and to share with us what was happening. And so that's how I ended up in Winnetka at Hubbard Woods. And after many years, I finally graduated to fifth grade, which is where I'm kidding. I finally got a chance to teach at the middle school, which is at the Skokie School in Winnetka. So I've been there now. This is my sixth year. And it has been such a wonderful experience for me to like retrain myself because for over 20, almost 30 years I had been either teaching elementary school or being an elementary school librarian, and so this was a whole new animal. I mean, that first year all I did was read every single thing I could get my hands on because I felt like the kids had such a head start on me. And I it's not that that's gotten better. I've just gotten better at understanding the genres and knowing which authors to recommend. And I'm constantly, you know, keeping track of what's going on and trying my best to stay on top. But it's almost impossible. But thanks to people like E-Train, I feel like we're able to share the best of the books that are coming out.
thank you. And, you know, I think just I just wanna take a moment to pause and just say how admirable and how inspiring you are, because I'm a middle schooler myself, and I know how difficult we can be. So the fact that you the fact that you chose Skokie School, that you're taking it, like, head on, teaching kids, inspiring them to read new books, and a lot of kids experience a middle school reading slump. It's a time where kids just don't really dive into any books, and you're single-handedly, as a school librarian, you're getting your students excited about reading and demonstrating the importance of books. And sure, my book recommendations may help a little bit, but you are the mastermind and you're doing such amazing work. What is your biggest challenge being a middle school librarian? And what kind of slang do you hear middle schoolers kind of use on the daily basis if you want to dive into that?
Slang.
Slang, like,
Yeah, I've been hearing Riz a lot lately, which is confounding because when I ask them about it, of course they always give me a different answer. I guess I don't hear a whole lot
hmm,
of slang so much, but I would say I think the heart of your question though is like, what's the biggest
yeah,
challenge of working with 10 to 12-year olds? And I, I'd say it's mostly time. Having enough time to feel like you are able to manage the role of kind of the a book whisperer, if you will. Where you're constantly either sharing books suggestions with students, but then also I feel like I work really hard to um, bring great resources to both teachers and students, and that takes a lot of time. And I certainly don't get it all done during the quote unquote school day. And so, just trying to find a balance of how do I keep such a high level of expectation of myself with being responsive to my physical health or my mental health, or even spending time with my wife. That's probably the hardest thing for me because I'm such a intense person, if you will, that when I'm doing something, I am fully doing it. And sometimes, I need somebody to smack me in the head and just say, like, take a break, go for a walk. And that's what my wife is really good at. She's good at keeping me balanced.
That is a great answer, and middle schoolers, you're right, it can be tough to kinda take on that role of book whisperer, and, I mean, I think you do a great job, but and I guess sometimes as students, we kind of expect our teachers or our librarians to kind of have it all figured out, have all the answers, but, I mean, nobody has all the answers, so it's important to respect that,
Right.
understand that, and speaking
Yeah.
of being a book whisperer, the most important books are those that are diverse and inclusive. And
Mhm.
I guess I have 2 questions in one for you. The first one is, how do you try to demonstrate to your students the importance of books being windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors? And also, what do you do to ensure your library shelves include diverse and inclusive books? So that's a bit of a 2 in 1.
Sure. That is a huge, huge, huge um, piece of what I believe we should be doing as librarians. Um, I believe that every student deserves to be represented, and sometimes you may not even know that that student is represented. But by exposing and exploring um, genres or topics that expose students to these issues or challenges or perspectives, I think we are doing our students the very best service by doing that. So, how do I do that? I mean, I think tools like School Library Journal and their recommendations. We Need Diverse Books is an incredible platform. The hashtag Own Voices is an incredible way to kind of keep track of um, new books and series that are coming out. I I would say that I follow so many inspirational authors online, especially Instagram. It seems to be a very author friendly format for a lot of people that I'm just constantly tagging those and adding them to our running next book order. So I think that's probably how I feel like I'm able to keep track of that.
So, my last question for you is, what are your top 5 favorite books to recommend to your students? Whether your top 5 personal favorite books or just books that you feel like your students need to read.
I would say The Canyon's Edge by Dusty Bowling, which is a great novel in verse. And we just had Dusty Bowling visit our school, so our entire school read her book, which was awesome. So that was really cool.
Ooh.
Um, and the next two are a little bit like these are all you could ask me this question next week and they might be very different top fives, but right now because I'm a bit obsessed with the content in my book, I would say that these next two are in particular are connected to that, and that is They Called Us Enemy by George Takei, I think it is, or Takei, I'm not sure how he pronounces his last name, but that is a graphic novel of his perspective of being put in an internment camp as a kid. Um, have you read that one, E-Train?
I have not read that one. I'll have to
Oh
check
my
it out.
goodness, you really, yeah, it's really really good. And then the third one I actually happen to have here on my desk, although it probably won't show very well because of the blur. It's called Seen and Unseen, And the subtitle is What Dorothea Lange, Toyo Miyatake, and Ansel Adams photographs reveal about the Japanese American incarceration. And so it's a very visual book. It's got photographs and illustrations from those famous photographers' images of the internment camps. So, but that was actually one of our state award nominees this year, and so I read it 3 times just because it's really, really good. And then the 4th one would be Away by Megan Freeman, which is also a novel in verse. I know we might not be able to get to all of our questions, but one of the questions that you had shared with me was like, what books are like flying off the shelves? And I would just say novels in verse have been huge in the last couple of years. And so, Away, which is the sequel to Megan Freeman's Alone, is a novel in verse and phenomenal. And then the final book that I almost always recommend is a survival book. Survival books are always popular. And it happens to be probably my favorite book of all time, and that is Hatchet by Gary Paulson.
That's one of my favorites as well. And I just want to thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for taking time out of your day to talk with me. So we all learned from you. We all learned so much from you. I learned a lot from this interview. And but of course, I can't let you go before asking one final question. The question I ask everybody.
Okay.
Yeah, the question I ask
Yes,
everybody who I interview. You may have heard it before, you may have heard me ask it. And
I have.
other people's answers have not influenced your own, or maybe they have, and that's great too. So it all comes down to this. If you could be or meet any literary character, fictional or real, it could be your favorite author or your favorite book character, who would it be and why?
Okay. It has to be a literary character, though, right?
Yeah, like it could be like an author, a
Okay.
book character in a book.
Yeah, I think I mean, so I'm gonna give this a double edge answer. I'm gonna say the author I'd like to meet would be Ernest Hemingway or Gary Paulson. I know both of them have long passed on now, but I would love to spend. Actually, how about Gary Paulson and Ernest Hemingway? I'd love to sit around a fire with the two of them
Mm,
and just hear the two of them talk. I think that would be pretty incredible.
that would be incredible. That's a
And
great
then
answer.
and then the other character would be, I think, Brian from Hatchet.
Mm. Those are two fantastic. I mean, I guess it's one answer, but two parts of an answer. So
Hmm, hmm.
I love it. Those are great authors, a great character. I love Hatchet as well. We read it, I believe, in 3rd grade or 3rd or 4th grade as a read aloud, and it's always stayed with me. So it's a fantastic
Yeah.
answer. So I just want to say I love talking to other book lovers, especially school librarians like you. And I mean, just incredible people like you, because you are an incredibly kind person, an incredibly wise person. You are just the best. And I think it's so amazing to be able to spend your days sharing your passion with others. You get to share your passion for books with your students. It's so inspiring. It gives me, and I'm sure everyone tuning in, the chance to think about all the different ways we can help bring book joy into the world. You're most definitely a book hero, Todd. And we need more people like you in the world, sparking a love of reading in children and helping kids feel good about who they are, helping kids feel seen when you give books that feature diverse characters, diverse themes, themes that kind of bring that understanding like, hey, you're like me. Resonation, like so kids can resonate with the books that they read. Is resonation a word? I think it
Yeah.
is. Um, but anyway, I cannot wait to read your new book. I cannot wait for the world to check it out. I cannot wait for everybody watching to check it out. And I'm so glad you're bringing it into the writing world. I wish we could talk more, but that is all the time we have for today. Thank you for watching, everybody. Thank you, Todd, for talking with me and for giving me the chance to learn from you, for giving everybody the chance to learn from you. You're the best. Stay safe, keep reading, and I'll see
Thank
everybody
you.
next one. Bye bye.